My name is Mandy. I am one of the teammates of Team 139 for this year's Rebelle Rally. I was also on 139 last year. The Rebelle Rally is an all-women's off-road navigation rally, and it is using only a map and compass. Electronics are locked up for the week. So it's kind of a really nice way to disconnect, be off the grid, get out and see some beautiful land. And I will say probably one of the hardest things is going back home the following Monday, and if you have to go back to work, starting work again, because you're just like, man, I was just doing something really cool last year and it's back sitting in front of my computer. So how do I make this happen next year? So this year we get to start not only in Arizona, but right at the base of the Hoover Dam. So we'll be doing our tech inspection there. So one of the cool things about the Rebelle is we have no idea where we're going to be. We just have a start and a finish. So for 7 days, we'll have checkpoints that we have to find throughout wherever we'll be. They usually give us more checkpoints than we're able to find. So it's all about kind of strategizing your route plan. So if you've done a lot of traveling off-road and kind of looked at a map, and kind of come up with a route plan, it's a lot of doing that and kind of picking your landmarks along the way. Only difference is they give you checkpoints. There's often some decoys in there that are going to be further off the route than you have time to find. Usually you have about 10 hours to find anywhere from 18 to 20 checkpoints. Your team comprises of a driver and a navigator. There are two classes. There's 4x4 and crossover, so I'll be competing this year in the 4x4. I did last year as well. So for the 2020 Rebelle, we were in my partner's 2020 JLU, and this year we're going to be in my 2020 Jeep Gladiator. So what's cool about this year that I'm really excited about is we'll be running at bone stock. So that's a special designator that the Rebelle offers. It allows a vehicle to be highlighted as if it were coming straight off the factory, which this is. The only thing we've changed on it are the wheels. We switched to some AEV Pintlers. You are allowed to change your wheels and your tires. Anything else takes it out of the bone stock category. Day one after the tech inspection, that was our first night because it was in the evening. So the next day was actually a practice day. It was a prologue day, and it was really great that they did it because it was basically a mock rally. So we had 10 checkpoints or so. They ran it exactly like a day would be for the rally, and that allowed us to get a lot of our really major mistakes out early, especially for part of the rally. It's not only just checkpoints, but they have timed enduros where you have to do some math and figure out how you should be getting to certain points and at what time, and there's hidden timing clocks within it. So if you're more than 3 seconds away from when you should be at that spot, you lose points. So we really screwed up our enduro that first day, so it was really great that it was a practice day. So got the jitters out, got some of our major mistakes out, and then the next day was the start of our first day. And it was a lot of nerves, but it was also a lot of excitement. You draw your start time the night before, so you have an idea how long you have when you wake up in the morning to pick up your checkpoints, get your plots done, and then you have to be at your vehicle 15 minutes before your start time. Usually your driver would be the one packing up base camp while your navigator plots checkpoints. One of the things that was unique about our team last year is that Irma and myself swapped roles. So every day one of us would drive, the other would navigate, and we thought that was pretty common, but when we got there, we were actually one of two teams that did it. At least for me personally, navigating can be very exhausting. It's a lot of fun. I love doing it, but thinking about doing it 7 or 8 days in a row, my brain would be very fried at the end. So everyone's assigned different checkpoints. So you can't just follow another vehicle, but why would you do that anyways? You're there for your own challenge. So as soon as you get out there, especially after kind of that first hour, you're out in the middle of nowhere by yourself. You might see some dust off in the distance, but for the most part, it's you and your teammate and your vehicle, and you're looking for 20 checkpoints for about 10 hours each day. So it's a rally, not a race. You'll hear a lot of people be like, it's a race. And yes, the faster you are getting to your checkpoints, the more you can get if you do it efficiently. However, there are also speed limits for all of it. So last year was the first year they actually checked speed on a lot of people, because our permits are through the Bureau of Land Management, and a lot of them are specific about the speeds that need to be driven. So although you feel like you want to floor it and go find your first checkpoint, it's just kind of easing off the start line and you're like, okay, here we go, we're getting started. So it was all nerves leading up to it, but the moment you start driving, you're like, okay, this isn't so bad. So now going into my second year, I have an idea of what I'm getting myself into, because like I said, Irma and I were both rookies last year, and we were both just like, I have no idea what we're doing. We've watched all these videos, we've gone to all this training, but like the only thing that's going to prepare you for doing it is doing it. Probably one of our lowest points last year was around day 3. We had 2 pretty good days. We were feeling really good about ourselves. I don't want to say ego got in the way, but ego probably got in the way more than it should have. We're like, we got this, we got the flow. Even though we knew things were going to get progressively more difficult, we didn't really take that into consideration until it happened. So it happened on our first day that we moved from one base camp to the other. That was the first day where you have to pack up camp, and where you're driving usually a very long distance to get to the next base camp. Because one of the things that they do are the green checkpoints are required. So if you miss a green or get there after closing, you have to skip every checkpoint until the next green. So we had about 3 hours to get to a checkpoint. We're like, plenty of time, you know, we'll get these 3 or 4 checkpoints before it. We didn't get those checkpoints, and we also missed our closing time. So we had to pass up a lot of checkpoints in between the greens. So we went from a very high, like, yeah, we're doing great, not bad for rookies, to, and we were like, all right, well, our ego was back in check, so we thought we had plenty of time, and we did not. So we rolled into the base camp late, so we missed out on those points too. So it was very much a like, all right, I have to reset. We thought we knew what we were doing. We clearly don't. We have to do way better with time management. Even though it's 3 hours, like, let's treat it as 4 before closing. So we started building in more time considerations. You know, let's spend no more than 30 minutes looking for this checkpoint. If we don't find it, move on to the next one. I'd say there were a lot of highs as far as just like doing some things that we didn't think we were capable of doing. I would say for me personally, driving in the sand dunes was something that I really enjoyed and that we did fairly well with. The sand dunes, if you haven't driven in sand, especially very large sand dunes, I would say the closest thing is driving in snow. But even that's not a fair comparison. You have to really learn how to read the sand dunes, which side is the pack side, which side is the soft side. And although I'd had a lot of practice doing that, I hadn't driven at the Glamis sand dunes. And if you've never been to the Glamis sand dunes, it's miles of sand dunes. It's ridiculous. It's like Star Wars, like out in the middle of nowhere. Like you drive up to it and you're like, oh my gosh, the sand never ends. And one of the unique things about the very last day, because you're in the sand dunes, they will allow you to team up with at least one other team, maybe 2 teams, for safety reasons, because you are so spread out in the sand dunes. So many people get stuck in the sand dunes. It's very hot in the sand dunes. Last year, I think it was about 114 degrees. We teamed up with a team that had done the rally a number of times. So for us, it was actually a really great learning experience to see how they thought and how they approached their checkpoints. But for me personally, it was also a confidence booster that I was able to keep up with a team who had done it before, because the sand dunes are one of those things, like the moment you mess up, like you can really mess up. They've had people roll vehicles in the past. If you don't know what you're doing, like you could really get into some trouble. And I know there was one time last year where we had to go from the top of the sand dune, through the sand dune up to the other side, but it was a really deep one with a lot of soft sand in between, which you can kind of tell, but until you drive it, you don't really know. Thankfully, Irma had her head down and was navigating as I drove through it. And when I got to the top, I was like, thank God you didn't see that, because that was a very steep sand dune. So once you start meeting the women that are doing it, you'll realize that it's something that anyone can do if it's something you really want to do. A lot of times people will say price is a factor. It is a little bit pricey. But once you do the Rebelle and see the amount of work that goes into it, you understand why it costs what it does. They basically spend the entire year planning the rally. The permits are expensive. We're across anywhere from 2,000 to 2,500 kilometers. Like, it's a huge event and everything that goes into it. So don't let your skill. Don't let the cost be a prohibiting factor. There are a lot of car manufacturers that will sponsor teams, depending on your background. There are a lot of people out there that are willing to help people get there as well. And then over the years, the Rebelle has offered various scholarships for people that are rookies getting into it. So get creative, and you can make it happen. If there's a How to Rebelle class nearby, or even one that you want to travel to, I'd recommend doing it just so that you can see what a day in the life of a Rebelle is. And the really cool thing about their classes too is it's usually run by the people that run the rally. So they're going to give you firsthand experience. They're going to be able to tell you why you should do it. And they'll also be very honest. If there's any sort of doubts or reasoning that you don't want to do it, they'll let you, they'll help you talk through that and figure out if it's something you want to do. Rolling into 2021, teammate change this year. Irma had something come up and wasn't able to do it. So a good friend of mine, Cindy Fajardo, who I've worked with for a number of years, and who is also a veteran. I'm an Army veteran. She's an Air Force veteran. So if you have any questions or want to learn more, or if you want to follow us through the rally this year, again, we're Team 139, Veterans United. My name is Mandy Brzezina. My teammate is Cindy Fajardo. If you want to follow us on Instagram, it's Team Veterans United. It's Team Veterans United on Facebook as well. And then on Twitter, we're Team Vets United. If you want to follow me personally or reach out to me with any questions you may have on Instagram, I'm Czech Pathfinder. Czech as in CZECH, Pathfinder.